So one of the nation's top players, a player we just talked about here recently and how they're as close to a must-land prospect for the Crimson Tide as there are, has just announced that they'll be making their collegiate decision July 8th. And of course, today we're talking about Peter Woods because we need to break down not only what Peter Woods brings to each of the four institutions that made his final list, but what those institutions offer to Peter Woods. Before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. And given that Alabama is the home state school here, do you believe the Crimson Tide are successful in keeping Peter Woods home? Let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, like and comment down below. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And before we do, we need to first know the four teams that are present in Peter Woods' top four. And those four teams are a really intriguing list. Alabama, Clemson, Florida, and Jackson State University all find themselves battling it out and trying to get the last word in for a Peter Woods. But before we talk about what each of those institutions offer to Peter Woods, what does Peter Woods offer each of those institutions? That's what we need to unpack first. And the answer to that is abundantly clear. Peter Woods is one of the most gifted athletes in all of the nation, regardless of position, and it makes complete sense that he's a five-star prospect. Because of that, every institution in the nation would love to get him in. Every defensive line coach, every defensive coordinator would love to plug him into their system because of the versatility, the ferocity, and the athleticism he brings to the table. His technique is already incredibly solid for someone in high school, and it's only going to continue improving. So when you look at the totality of circumstances around Peter Woods, this is a prospect that it makes complete sense that institutions would be clamoring for. He would be a great land for any of these four institutions. But having said that, what do these schools offer to Peter Woods? Peter Woods offers a whole lot, and you would hope it would be reciprocated. But let's start with the home state school, the Alabama Crimson Tide. And if playing in close proximity is a big deal for Peter Woods, if he wants to be near his family, well, it's going to be next to impossible to beat the Crimson Tide. And the things they offer outside the close proximity, I find to be much more compelling, such as the rate of development, not only in sending guys to the NFL, but specifically the rate of development of 5 stars going into the first round of the NFL draft. Look, we know at the end of the day, the goal is NFL for a lot of these top-level prospects, but the difference in money between first round and fourth round is astronomical, and getting that first round grade is the ultimate goal for any of these prospects because that money difference is that serious. You're talking millions of dollars in difference, and that could be life-changing money. So that's going to be a heavy pitch utilized. Something else I find compelling in the Crimson Tide's favor is their ability to consistently compete for national championships year in, year out, giving every single one of their players a lot of media exposure, which at the end of the day is a good thing if you're trying to get seen by scouts. So Alabama has a ton to offer. They have Nick Saban. They've consistently been a top-tier defense. They consistently pop out defensive linemen that go into the first round or the second round of the NFL draft off of only one season of work, which is very impressive. And Freddie Roach is going to be on the trail attempting to lock this one down. But what about Clemson? Clemson has been recruiting at such a high level for quite some time now. And the interesting thing with the Clemson Tigers is I know Clemson fans have to be incredibly excited to find themselves in this position because they not only lost Brent Venables, a fantastic defensive coordinator who's fielded great defenses for the Clemson Tigers, but they also lost Todd, someone who orchestrated some of the nation's best defensive lines year in and year out. Still, through all of those losses, you find yourself in the top 4 for a top 5-star defensive lineman out the state of Alabama, and you're seriously in this running. That in and of itself, I find to be incredibly compelling for Clemson fans, and the Clemson Tigers also offer a lot. Look, that's another institution that's been very successful at developing their prospects and sending them to the NFL draft, a rate that very few other institutions can rival, and because of that, they have a legitimate pitch saying to Peter Woods, hey, There are very few institutions that can rival not only the rate of production we offer in terms of getting kids to the NFL, but also media exposure. Clemson is going to be playing in big games. They're going to be trying to compete to get to the college football playoffs. Why not come be a part of that? That could be a pitch that's hard to say no to, so this is a situation we have to watch. But make no mistake, do not think just because Brent Venables and Todd Bates are no longer there, Clemson's not going to be able to pull top-level defensive prospects. This is a staff that still contains Dabo Swinney, and it's a staff that must be respected. But now let's talk about the Florida Gators. The new kid on the block, Billy Napier, wants to make a splash, and what better way to do that than to go into the state of Alabama and pull one of their best prospects, a prospect who I have said in the past is as close to a must-land for the Crimson Tide as there possibly is. That in and of itself would be huge, and luckily for the Florida Gators, they're sending in a recruiter who's gotten very high-level prospects before in Sean Spencer, the same individual who signed Micah Parsons to Penn State. So this is someone who has familiarity in recruiting five-star prospects. Florida is an intriguing team right now. The state of Florida is disproportionately loaded with high school talent. We've talked about this before, how in the top 300 players in all of the nation, 57 of them reside in the state of Florida, which is truly an astronomical number. But that shouldn't stop Florida from looking at other states and attempting to go get prospects out of that state. Recruiting is far too national now, and as much as the Florida Gators, Miami, and Florida State want to lock up their own backyard, they need to also have a pipeline to other states. And as I said when I started talking about Florida, you want to talk about sending a strong message, this would be that strong message. Now, in fairness, I do think it's going to be very difficult for another SEC team to go into Alabama and lift Peter Woods. I think that this Crimson Tide staff would do everything at their disposal to not let that happen, but at the end of the day, Florida has a ton of hype on the trail right now. They have a lot of good recruiters, and it's a respectable institution, so it needs to be taken seriously. And finally, we have Jackson State, one of the most interesting teams in all of football, a team that landed some coveted prospects a year ago, and they look to repeat it. And I have news for everybody, do not discount this staff. Deion Sanders is an incredibly charismatic individual who knows the game of football like the back of his hand. When you combine those two things, it makes complete sense that players want to play for Coach Prime. He is an infectious character, and I completely understand it. But what does Jackson State bring to the table? And for those of you that are saying this isn't going to happen, remember, Jackson State's the same school that walked into Florida last year and pulled not only the best player in Florida, but one of the best players in all of high school football, Travis Hunter. So saying that this is impossible is just facetious. It may be improbable, but it is certainly not impossible. So for Jackson State and Peter Woods, they have absolutely nothing to lose. They have so much at their disposal to use as a pitch, coming to Peter Woods saying, hey, why don't you come and join our class? We got a top tier player last year. We can put you on the defensive line. They're playing corner, and we can really start building something that will excite other prospects and get the ball rolling. Because if Jackson State can continue pulling these top prospects like a Travis Hunter last year, and if they can pull a Peter Woods this year, other top prospects are going to take note of that. They're going to pay attention, and the likelihood that Jackson State lands more prospects is going to go up. So this is a situation we have to watch. Jackson State and Coach Prime are one of the most intriguing situations in all of college football right now because of the success they had a year ago on the trail, and they look to replicate that this year. And what better way to do that than by landing Peter Woods? And though I think it would be a very tough thing to do, it's not impossible. We could say it's improbable. Certainly it isn't impossible. So every one of these institutions has something to offer. For one of the most gifted players in all of high school football, this is a situation we're going to have to keep up with because, as I've said multiple times, this is a prospect that's as close to a must-land for the Crimson Tide as there is, and it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to get him. But having said all that, I can't wait to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know where you think Peter Woods goes. Let me know some other prospects you'd like to hear about, and we'll talk about that here at the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because I'd love to have you a part of this awesome community. That's it. See ya.